Finally got payback on an ex-coworker. This was few years ago, but it ran across my mind today for some reason. When I was 20 I started a job as a teller at Wells Fargo. At the specific location it was a trailer, or that's what we called it anyway. Just picture a super long skinny building. Also this was only for drive-through, it was located next to the actually bank. This drive-through had 8 drive-ups and 2 pull-ups for merchants. The merchant pull-ups were literally on the building and the others were in front. Picture a Sonic fast food place. 4 of the drive-ups were on one side of the trailer and another on the other side. It took at least 5 of us to man this on a slow day. Well, one day my boss let everyone got to lunch at once except for 3 of us. Myself, Kim and Jessica. Well, my half of the trailer, where I was completely by myself, had to man the 4 drive-thrus and the merchant. If you know, doing the merchant is time-consuming. There's typically a lot of cash being deposited which takes time obviously to count, etc. Well, on this day Kim and Jessica just didn't feel like working, literally just sat there as I was trying to help 5 separate people at once. Jessica walks over and tell me to hurry up and people are waiting. I looked at her in disbelief. I asked her to help, while Kim just sat there staring at me. I got so pissed off, I called Jessica a bitch straight up. Well, my idiot boss comes back from her lunch and Jessica goes straight to her and complains about me. I got written up. My boss could not have cared less of the circumstances, oblivious to the lack of scheduling on her part. Whatever. Anyway, I ended up getting fired because Jessica just couldn't let it go. She was traumatized. Also didn't help, my boss kept making me work the merchant lane. If you know about being a teller, you know that being a merchant teller requires experience. This was my first teller job ever. Okay, so the fun part. Years later I opened an account at a local credit union. It was just an account for fun money. Totally forgot about it after like a year and realized it was in the negative. Can't even remember how that happened, but it was literally like $3. So I go in to take care of it and lo and behold, there's Jessica. She immediately recognized me. I go to the counter and another girl pulls up my account. I immediately tell her why I'm there, of course. Well, Jessica sees this as an opportunity to embarrass me. Also there's at least 4 other account holders in the small lobby. The teller that's helping me had to call a number to reset the account. Well, Jessica walks over, leans over this girl and loudly says, her account is in the negative, she needs to pay that first, and then glares at me and smirks. Oh hell no. So I let the girl finish the call and get things squared away. Get my account to like a $100 balance. No much, but again this is just my fun money account. I head out the door and if damned be me, I run into the branch manager. I tell her about Jessica and that I was considering closing my account over it. Well, about 2 hours later I get a call from the branch manager and she apologized profusely and told me Jessica had been let go because it wasn't the first complaint about her and not the first time she had been unprofessional. Job interviewer ghosted me and then had one of his employees tell me to go home, so I did. While I do have a job already, I thought it would be worthwhile to see what else is out there. A week ago, I found a job posting on Indeed. It sounded like a good gig, paid good and is work that I like doing. The only downfall is that it's a 35-minute drive out of town. I had a good conversation with the business owner, via Indeed inbox, and he seemed like a good guy. I explained that I work every day from 7 a.m. to 3:10 p.m. and he understood that there is a bit of a commute to his shop. He asked me if I could meet up with him at 3:30. I told him that it isn't possible as I was done at 3:10 and can't do a 35-minute drive in under 20 minutes. I explained that I would be leaving town at 3:10 to come and see him, and that I would see him when I get there, somewhere around 3:40-ish, so I gave him with my phone number just in case something was to change, and we left on a good note. I drove rather fast, getting there at 3:37, happy that I got there in under 35 minutes. I show up, business closed. I figured he was somewhere nearby, so I get out of my vehicle to search. I look over to my left to see 2 teenagers moving some materials. I approach them and ask them where their boss was while explaining that I had a meeting with him now. One of them then informs me that he just left a few minutes ago, but could call him back to come meet me. He calls his boss, saying who I am, etc. The teenager chuckles, says okay with a "you gotta be fucking kidding me" look on his face and then hangs up. Teenager to me, he says to go home. I asked him to repeat himself. He said go home, this time laughing uncomfortably. I now have another 35-minute drive ahead of me and I am very irritated. I decided to leave as his boss instructed, but instead of driving the gravel driveway back onto the highway, the way I came in from, I decided to leave him a present to remember me by, some donut tire skid marks on his front lawn as I tore out of there. 30 minutes after that, he felt the need to reach out to me and introduce himself via private number, but I let it go to voicemail as I was driving, which upon listening to later on, further proved to me that all his negative Google reviews were more than likely all true, and that this person isn't someone to do business with anyways. Constantly let your dog shit on my lawn. Enjoy your smelly garbage cans. For context, I live in a small cul-de-sac with 4 other houses. We're all pretty close and friendly since it's a small neighborhood. Except one house, they keep to themselves and are generally pretty inconsiderate with noise ordinances and such. I'm talking doing loud machine work at 6:45 a.m. on a Saturday. I have a large dog and his poops are sizable. I don't like to let him poop on the front lawn since I've put a lot of work into making it look nice. Suddenly, I start finding poops that were not his. I could tell based on size and a few other factors that these were not my dog's shits. The first few I let go, just picked up and tossed, but after finding one almost every single morning for weeks, I had enough. I checked my doorbell camera and lo and behold, my neighbor was letting their dog shit on my lawn, then just calling them back and going inside. The final straw was watching their dog dig into my flower bed, which I had previously attributed to squirrels or rabbits since we have a lot in our area. I tried speaking to them about it a few times, but they actively dodge interactions with all the other neighbors in our cul-de-sac. I go outside while they are washing their car, they drop the hose and go inside for a while. I try to catch them in the morning before work, they either hustle into their car or go back inside. It's the most childish thing I've ever seen. The revenge. Fridays are garbage days, so most folks get their cans out Thursday night since it comes so early in the morning. For 4 days I picked up the shit and stored it in a box, unbagged. I used a bag to pick it up. At 11 p.m., as I'm letting my own dog out before bed, I empty that box into their garbage can and waited. Our local municipality has strict rules on animal waste, mainly that it must be bagged. I work from home, so I knew I'd see that pickup happen. The can was pulled over, and once they flipped back the lid to get it into the truck, that worker immediately closed it and slapped them with a fine for unbagged waste. It likely won't stop the pooping, but the revenge was sweet. I got my 6th grade bully fired and his GF to break up with him. When I was in 6th grade, I was being bullied by this boy in my grade, we'll call him Tom. He bullied me every day, especially during P.E class. I remember thinking about how I was going to enact my revenge on him one day. Well, fast forward to 10 years later, I am working at a popular lunch spot and my manager asked me about hiring this new guy named Tom. I knew it was him and I gave him a bad recommendation, but that wasn't the end of it, because he still got hired. I found out that Tom had a girlfriend who he was trying to keep a secret. Anyways, one of my coworkers who happened to be the niece of the owner tells me she has a big crush on Tom and that they had sex the other night. I say to her, "That's crazy, did you know about his girlfriend?" To say she was shocked was an understatement. My coworker immediately asked me for the girlfriend's Facebook information, which I eagerly gave to her. She writes up a beautiful Facebook message to Tom's girlfriend, telling her everything that had happened between them the night before, and then, after that, she goes home and tells the owner about what slimeball Tom truly was. Tom got fired like a week later, and his girlfriend broke up with him. Try to drive me off the road. Good luck using your mirrors. This was around 2006 in Reading, England. I'm Dutch, so I cycle to work, partly because it's fun, partly because cutting through town on my MTB was about 10 minutes while it took me at least half an hour by car on most days. But England isn't as cyclist-friendly as the Netherlands, understatement face with tears of joy, and I'm a stupid 20-something that likes to go fast, so I dash through traffic left and right like a maniac, enjoying the honks of startled drivers stuck in traffic. One day I got cut off by a driver, deliberately pushing me towards the sidewalk. I was able to jump onto the sidewalk and gave him an unimpressed little applause, which pissed him off even more. Unfortunately, traffic cleared at that point and he was able to follow me and tried the same stunt again. I wasn't in the mood for his bullshit and feigned going into a side street. He continued. The end, I thought. When I turned into the street of my apartment building, I noticed his car parked in my street. That evening when I walked to the corner shop, it was still there. Decided I had to enact some petty revenge and folded in his mirrors. Continued to do this over the next few weeks every time I saw his car and I could get away with it. One evening coming home from the pub, I saw the guy walking to his car completely losing it and shouting that he would find the person touching his car and kill him. I moved house a few weeks later, still makes me smile thinking about it though. Want to go through pedestrian zone with your motorbike? You'll ride at pedestrian pace. I was out for a run, and I was going through a park, where there are some small, let's say trails. It's in the city, so don't image mountains and such. Just quite narrow unpaved roads, let's say narrow central parkways. If two people meet, one has to go slightly out of the way to pass. Almost marginal for a small motorcycle. So, this park in a way cuts my area in two, and if you want to transit to certain places, you have to go around, as I believe in any part in the world. Anyway, a lot of motorcycle users, the smaller ones, as the bigger wouldn't fit, like delivery people etc., tend to go through the part and its trails, instead of taking the 5 minutes normal route. This is of course forbidden, against the law and of course dangerous for the pedestrians, as there are a lot of families with small children learning to walk or bike, strollers, elders walking etc. So, as I was running, I was such a motorcycle about to come into the trail I was on, so I told the guy that he shouldn't come through here and go around, quite politely I must add. As a typical Greek guy, he started shouting that he can go wherever he wants, and I should shut up, and so, okay, please be my guest and get in the trail. He is behind me, and if I don't move to the side there is absolutely no way he can get through without hitting and injuring me. As you can guess, I never gave way, only for a couple of older ladies coming from the opposite side on their walk, that were also critically starring him. I also slowed my running to a point it was more of a walk. He had to stay behind me for about 5 minutes, which is less than the time it would have taken him to use the normal road. Of course shouting the whole time, but who cares? I know, it's not much, but I felt good. The best revenge is a life well lived. A few years ago in I.F. started working at a hobby shop where I met Rose and Wilson. We all started as work friends, eventually Rose and Wilson beginning to date. Rose was gorgeous then, skinny and healthy, perfect skin, beautiful hair, great makeup, was always clean. She was actively going to therapy and taking medication for her mental health issues and was doing great. I began to have issues at home causing me to look for my first apartment. During this time Rose implied her family was mistreating her. This was proven false. Eventually she made a claim which made Wilson and I feel that our hand is forced and got an apartment, which I paid the entire deposit and fees for. For a bit Rose could not move in with us for around a month and did not put any money towards it. Very quickly she started to reveal that she was a parasite. Getting a dog named Toph I had to take care of, quitting her job, not paying her part, no chores, using my things without permission, even stopping putting effort into herself. She didn't wash herself properly and only showered twice a week, stinking up whatever room she was in. Soon she began taking any anger she had out on me, then saying it wasn't her fault since she is bipolar, love-bombed me, then went back to mistreating me. Wilson did not get involved to avoid her wrath. Eventually she had isolated me, made me the bad guy, made me rely on her, having learned of my own issues then using them against me. I tried to reach out for help from a mutual, who turned around and told Rose out of revenge since I friend-zoned her. This made Rose gaslight me into thinking I was being the crazy one. I was forced to stay with them as I had nowhere to go. We moved to a slightly bigger apartment with an extra person after Toph passed. Rose left a door open while I was at work and Toph got out into a busy street, which Rose blamed Wilson's little brother. The revenge. Eventually I found my now fiancé, Sam, him taking my attention from Rose causing the behavior to get worse. I finally realized what Rose had been doing to me. I moved out later while they were on a 2-day trip. I basically vanished from their lives. I didn't pay my part of the rent for that month since it was only a week into it. I canceled the water bill that was under my name, and I had reported the nasty condition Rose and Wilson left their room in causing bug issues that spread to the apartment below. Then as the last bit of revenge I took Toph's ashes, as she was really my dog anyway. They didn't get evicted but they had to pay fees, which on top of the water being shut off forced Rose to start working again but has been unable to hold down a job for more than a month. A year later I'm in an apartment with my best friend of 10 years, my fiancé, and my new kitten. I had started to go out of my way to post happy life updates knowing she had a second account purely to stalk me. I got engaged before her. Wilson doesn't want to despite her insistence, with a beautiful proposal. I have a great job which is setting me on a career path for the rest of my life. I've lost weight, I'm in therapy, and I'm planning a wedding that while small is incredibly nice and something she could never have. Recently I saw Rose in public. She is overweight, covered in acne, has matted hair, and looked like she hasn't showered in weeks accompanied by a miserable-looking Wilson. Rose spotted me with Sam, even trying to follow us but was stopped by Wilson. Sam told me she looked furious. I had pretended not to even notice her. The best revenge from all of this is living a better life than her and knowing I live rent-free in her mind. No tips. No problem. This was over 20 years ago, but when it comes to mind it still makes me smile. I was 20 and working for one of the largest event staffing agencies in Chicago. They're gone now, but they were #1 at the time, and we were contracted to work the opening of the new Nordstrom's on Grand Avenue. This was a very big deal. They needed so many bodies they also hired several of our friendly competitors to cover all the bases. I was very interested in becoming a bartender, but it was still a few months before I'd be turning 21. The bosses knew this but were so hard up to meet their obligations they didn't care and I ended up getting what can aptly be described as a crash course. My training for a position of extraordinary craft, nuance, knowledge and precision was about 45 minutes long, and suddenly I was the only underage professional bartender in the city. I was stationed at a specialty satellite bar, which is to say me and one other guy, I think his name was Daniel, had a small bar tucked away on one of the upper floors of a huge multi-story shopping complex in women's wear, with only a few ingredients in huge quantities, and responsible for making only 2 cocktails, the Harvey Wallbanger and the Madras. This was a star-studded event for the creme de la creme of the city, and with the huge volume speed would be essential. So we pumped out as many drinks as we could for a few hours. Now, no one is required to tip, especially at an event where everything is already paid for. But it's a nice thing that encourages prompt and professional service, even favoritism in some cases. And if you were in attendance at this particular event, you for sure weren't hurting for capital. But literally no one would give us $1. We were sweating, hauling, pumping, smiling all the while, and people weren't even being polite about it, let alone tossing us a quarter for what I could describe as a Herculean effort. It was frustrating. Inevitably, someone who just wanted a drink with no baggage came up and asked for just a vodka on ice, and it was top-shelf product, Grey Goose if I recall. So Daniel poured them a pretty heroic amount. They walked away without a word, not even a thank you for bending the rules at our own peril. I watched Daniel do this and saw the look on his face, and we caught each other's gaze and had one of those moments where we communicated without a word. We nodded at each other and began our petty vengeance. The vodka, as I said, was all paid for, and we had a lot of it on hand with reserves off the floor. So we started pouring doubles, even triples, pretty much exclusively. All bets were off. Want a screwdriver instead? Have a double. Would the lady prefer a simple Cape Cod? Better make it a triple. It's already bought, so who cares? Just want vodka on ice. Have an entire glass. We're here to serve. No one in charge cared if we strayed from the recipe book, but eventually an event captain did approach us to let us know that someone mentioned we were pouring a little heavy, so maybe pull back a bit. We both said, "Sure thing, boss," and went right on getting people completely schmammered. All sense of decorum and gentility evaporated around our bar, and after an hour we had people dancing in clothes and lingerie they didn't pay for, making out with mannequins, just the works. I know for sure someone vomited in the swimwear aisle. We still weren't making any tips, but it finally felt worth the effort. At the end of the event, when we were breaking down our bar, a younger guy we hadn't served, we could tell because he wasn't shit-faced, came up to our bar and said, "I used to do events, and it's not easy. I could tell you guys were really working hard, and you deserve this," and tipped us each a $10 bill. He was the greatest capper to a banner evening, and I salute him. The rest of that crowd can pound glass. Did you know that you've been scanned? Years ago, my spouse and I were visiting our youngest daughter and her husband in a major city in one state with a name which might make you think that it was in the neighboring state. There's a city with the same name in the neighboring state to make things more confusing. Enough of the backstory. One evening we visited a major entertainment district in the city and headed for Jacob Leinenkugel's tap room. I enjoyed a massive, IIRC, 2-liter, is almost equal to 4 1/4 pint, stein of a vanilla porter and watched a football game being played by their local NFL team on the TV set. I nursed the porter through 2/4 of the game, and the time for our reservations at a local barbecue restaurant was approaching, so we headed out. The shortest path between 2 points being a straight line, we headed across the outdoor dance floor toward where our transportation was parked. Feeling rather happy, I started moving to the music. There was a huge crowd of millennials and Gen X/Gen Y folks dancing, and I was required to weave around the happy couples to maintain my shortest route. A rather pretty, younger than my daughter, African-American lady carrying a big purse came up to me and asked, "Do you want to dance?" I remember feeling her large purse brush my backside as I said, "Thank you kindly, but I need to catch up with my wife and daughters." And I continued my shortest distance route through the crowd. After navigating the dance floor, I made it to the sidewalk just as my family arrived at the same place. A man stepped between my family and I and flashed a federal badge. "Excuse me," he said, "did you know that you've been scanned?" I called to my family to hold up for a moment, turned to the special agent, and said, "No, I wasn't aware. I don't believe that I have anything to scan. I don't believe that any of my cards have the technology yet." I was wrong. "My colleagues are making an arrest right now." He pointed down to the dance floor where the pretty African-American girl was being handcuffed and the oversized purse was being searched. They pulled a small computer out of the purse and the special agent got a puzzled look on his face. He turned to me and asked, "What's a cat card?" It suddenly dawned on me that my university ID did indeed have a chip in it used for access to secure areas on campus. I explained what it was, and he smiled. The woman in custody asked what the F*** a cat card was. I gave the special agent my contact info in case I was needed to testify, and we went for a wonderful repast of burnt ends. Post my number on fake mail for male casual encounters ads. How about fake Craigslist ads bringing hundreds of people to your door at 5:30 a.m.? Mwahaha. In my mid-20s, early 2010s, I was looking for a used moped. I found one on an online marketplace. The seller didn't want me to go to him, so he met me at my apartment complex. It was a really big apartment complex, so he wouldn't know where I actually lived. He pulls the moped out of the back of his truck and 2 to 3 pieces literally fall off of it. It had a flat tire, so I couldn't test ride it. At that point, I'm out. He starts yelling at me too about how I'm a time waster and how I should pay for his gas. I tell him off as I'm walking away, and that was that. Except he kept calling and texting me talking shit. I gotta admit, it got quite juvenile between us. Part of me was like, just block this fool and be done, but the petty part of me kind of liked watching him squirm because I was dropping rhetorical elbows on him. Pretty much all of his insults were something about me being gay and liking gay sex. I'm straight, and my then GF was with me when I met up with him. So after a while I start feeding into it, except I turned it around about his mom being a dude and me being her top. I told you, very sophomoric and depraved. Think like South Park type of dialogue. After a particularly brutal exchange, he stopped and I thought it might finally be over. The next day mid-afternoon my phone starts blowing up. When I say blowing up, I mean like I was getting so many calls that every time I answered one I'd have multiple missed calls and voicemails and text messages as soon as I got off. It took a while to figure it out, but he had put up multiple Craigslist ads all around the country for everything from severely discounted vehicles, great deals on fake apartments, and even male-for-male casual encounters. My phone was literally unusable. Could not dial it because of constant incoming calls, texts, and quite a few dick pics. I had to borrow my girlfriend's phone to file a police report so they could get him to stop. After a little time the cop calls me back with him on the line, and he basically gets us both to say we'll stop. Like a couple of kids getting a warning from an elementary teacher or something. And that was the end, or so I thought. A couple months go by and the calls start again. Again I call the police, but this time they're less than helpful, basically asking me if I can prove that it's him. I thought I might need to take legal action to get it to stop, so I requested a copy of the police report. The copy they sent me included his address by mistake, should have been redacted. Booyah. That Friday night I posted a ton of fake Craigslist ads from a burner account about giving away tons of household items, bikes, kids' stuff, clothes, furniture, appliances, you name it. The ads had a story about moving out of the country and needing it all gone ASAP. I put his address in the ads and said I'd be putting everything on the driveway at 5:30 a.m. sharp Saturday morning, and if the item they wanted wasn't out yet, to knock on the door. He only lived about 20 minutes away from me and I couldn't miss this show, so I got to his house and parked about a block up at 5 a.m. on the dot, took the ads down to cover my tracks, and just waited for people to start showing up. It was like Black Friday on steroids. People with pickup trucks and trailers, box trucks, and plenty of people with regular cars too. It was gridlock for a few blocks around his house. People honking like it was rush hour. His lawn looked like a fucking concert, there were so many people. Him and his chick were going absolutely apeshit. His neighbors were waking up and yelling out their windows. I could hear his chick screaming, "I told you not to fuck with that dude again." The funniest thing I've ever seen. I was dead. Never got any retaliation. I guess he got the message. He got me pretty good, but I got the better of him in the end.